Getting some things together. Getting some things together. Give me a second. Give me a second. We'll get into our conversation in 1 second. Shalom, everybody. Sabbath. Happy Sabbath to everybody. Shalom. It's, alright. Let me see something. Trying to edit some stuff.
All praises.
Um, let's see what we got. Finishing up. Give me a second. Give me a second. We get everything squared away on them tags. hmm But don't have more than one character. It's funny. Alright. Let me see. One side. What we missing here? No. 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 Alright. Testing 1 2 1 2. Testing 1 2 1 2. Shalom, shalom, shalom. Blessings and peace be unto you. It's your brother Yashair, and we are here with another Yashair charcuterie. I think we live, but we trying to make sure we 100%. I ain't sure yet, so we trying to work some things out. Give me a second, folks. Make sure we got this thing vibing. And it's doing what it's supposed to do. If not, we taking it to Instagram, Twitch, TikTok, Facebook, all of them. You know what I mean? So, alright, yeah. We up and running now. We got it popping. Just want to make sure everything was all copacetic. we can see everything like how we're supposed to. 100. Yeah. Alright, alright, alright. So we up and running, Shalom and shalom. It is your brother Yasha here for those who are on the way. Blessings be unto you. One love to the humble. Shout out to the brother One Love. Shout out to the brother K. Shout out to the wonderful sister Crimson at the Crimson Cure. And shout out to all those who have ears to hear and eyes to see in these days. So tonight's discussion kind of came by way of the recent video, the recent study that I'm actually working on. And it is half review, half statements, half truths based on the lives, the history of those who are considered FBA, and the fork in the road in which we are at right now and have been for some time. However, while doing that research for that submission, I end up coming across a real interesting piece that I end up deciding to use for the video. And in this piece, this is where the topic of tonight's discussion came to fruition from. And so, the topic, when did those who consider themselves or started to identify or self-identify themselves as FBA become known as a cult? That's what I'd like to discuss tonight. And if you could, do me a favor, let me know that you can hear me on the chat. You're able to pick up the conversation and the audio. That way, if I gotta do some tweaking. However, when did that narrative start that this was a cult? Now, when I heard it spoken as such, I was this many years old, because I just heard it yesterday, when it was held in that regard. And I said, this is very, very interesting that now how the landscape and the atmosphere has shifted. And for those who have self-identified, for those who have called and believe that they are foundational blacks because they have no other lineage to identify to other than the culture in which they were raised and their family has been delineated from. With that, when did that become known as a cult? Is this now a byproduct of the delineation and self-identification of those, mainly in the Americas, who identify as FBA, and them using and coining the term FBA or ADOS or black as broad in today's phraseology, but you get what I'm saying, right? When that process, when that movement began and it started to take headway, there was a lot of pushback. But the pushback that was coming were coming from all of the other nations that seemingly were like, hey, we would wish and we would like you to stop lumping everyone in under black. So, with that being said, when did that shift take place? I like to say the last 2 months or so has gotten extremely heavy, or then not so much. Now, there has always been a separation in my 45 years between those who have identified as African American or black, or as they now use the term FBA, and those who are from the continent or those who are from the Caribbean islands. It's no secret. The conversation has been had at length. The receipts have been pulled up historically, recently, and dated. So, with that, why now this uproar that it's a cult? I'm looking and trying to figure out what was submitted and the aspect that I will use for the submission. The brother said, any division, predominantly melanated skin, is a byproduct of white supremacy. Do you agree or disagree? If you choose to separate yourself from other groups, other ethnic groups, other different cultural groups of melanated peoples, then you are willingly aiding in white supremacy. Is his stance. Was his stance, is his stance. He's still alive. Not trying to speak ill on a brother. And so, he was quite aggressive with it. His stance was, if I see anybody who identifies as FBA, I think that we should run up on them and we should not give them any liberty to speak their hateful rhetoric that is causing division amongst melanated people. Again, this is his stance. And so, as he continued to emphasize on how and why he sees those who identify as FBA as a cult, as delusional, as those who are seemingly trying to run away from he really didn't go into that detail on that, but I guess the identity that is attached, it got me to thinking, is all of this pushback because it is seen as a cult, or is all of this pushback because this is a new form of solidarity for people who seemingly everyone is happy when they are, for lack of a better word, the diaspora, just dispersed and just scattered. So the conversation needs to definitely happen, because I believe it's one of the new agenda tactics that are being implemented in to discredit those who identify as FBA from any unity, any linking, and any commonality. Because to say it's a cult for individuals whom historically and tenuredly you said you had no commonality, no identification, no similarities outside of the hue of your pigmentation, I don't understand what all the pushback is for. So I was hoping someone could share some of their reasonings how or why they see those who identify as FBA as a cult. There are a lot of groups that operate in cult, and at that point, that could probably be subjective, right? What you think is cultish, what someone else thinks is cultish, what you think is acceptable, what somebody else thinks is acceptable. However, what is the fruit of this cult outside of wanting to separate for survival and cultural identity? I like to know. So hopefully we can get some answers to the question of the day, because in my humble opinion, this is one of the many facets of division that is taking place right now. The main one is being that of the wheat and the tares. And if you are a piece of wheat and you are desiring to separate from those who are tares and engage in terrorist behavior, I think it's mighty forward of someone to say that you are willingly aiding white supremacy because you no longer want to stomach the behaviors and the mindsets of some of your melanated counterparts because they just don't want to get right. Which is a fantastic segue to a conversation I was having with a brother of mine earlier today. And then I reiterated it with my mother. Those who have been tares, those who have been destructive, those who have been back truce breakers, those who have been all about the so-called finer things of life at other people's expense, greedy. Have they not always been that way? Folks that will give you the shirt off their back. No one has a nasty word to say about them. That when the chips are down and you make that call, you know that's the type of person that'll pick up the phone and be there no matter what. It's always been a separation. And I think it's time that we start identifying those who have that same energy and those who don't. It's time to start marking those amongst us that cause division. Because winter is here if you ain't seen. And I'm not talking about the days and the months of the year. But the coldness of man has definitely arrived. And it's only getting colder. And that temperature is rapidly dropping. While destruction is rapidly increasing. While lawlessness is rapidly increasing. So there's multiple separations taking place. But as it pertains to our conversation tonight, why is it now looked at that those who consider and call themselves FBAs are looked at as a cult simply because they want to preserve and uphold a banner of identity and culture unity? I tell you, man, Babylon play a real interesting game. 1 minute it's up, 1 minute it's down, 1 minute is sideways, 1 minute is wet, 1 minute is dry, 1 minute is calm, 1 minute is chaotic. You never know what you're gonna get. I will say this. Unifier, Shalom, my brother. It's funny you have popped up in there. Brother K was just bringing your name up today, and here you are, stopped in at the live. Ain't that about a blessing? What's up, brother? I pray all is well with you and the family during these interesting times. Congratulations, my brother, on the family and things of the like. I hope all is well. So, as we were saying, and wanting to preserve after being ostracized and after being marginalized by all the other nations that proudly and in jest would speak with such haughty and such indifference towards FBAs. I remember my own experiences, and I've always been a brother, what's up sister type man, because I've always seen the forest behind the tree. I've always seen the bigger picture. But for some of us who haven't seen the bigger picture, we have had experiences, and mine's is no different than a lot of other stories. You look, you have an energy of fostering a bridge of commonality, connection, only to be met with a cold, hard indifference and almost disdain. Now, it's no secret at this point the information, the receipts have been revealed with the way that information is run to and fro with the internet, the way that lives are going on, the way that they got people mind. Folks is talking, and they don't need no liquor. They just running their mouth. And so a lot of things have been unearthed. A lot of truths have come to the surface. One of the positive points about this crazy time that we're living in is that there is so much communication. One would say, and rightfully so, there is over communication, miscommunication, mass communication within the miscommunication. However, topics that weren't being discussed, phraseologies that weren't being used, are now being used and being discussed. And so with that, the conversations from those of the continent, from their own mouths, about how they were brought up to hold a disdain, to stay separate, and to not foster any community or networking with FBAs, is known and tenured. It's no secret. The same can be said with the brothers and sisters that come from the Caribbeans and the islands. So, when FBA say that they want to separate and uphold the banner that their ancestors and their day-to-day lives continue to take a toll on, I don't believe it's anything to look at in a cultish type form. However, this gaining traction that it is of a cult, and I was just taken aback at how, when everyone else upholds the banner of their culture and their ethnicity, everything is cool. That narrative continues to always come up. Everything is always okay for everyone else, except for those who do identify or are now identifying as FBA. What our brother Unifier say? I actually agree with some of the issues of the FBAs, with that the FBAs have with immigrant blacks, and I'm half Caribbean. But the issue is they're rude about it and have become haughty. I totally agree, brother. We got to follow up off of that, brother. My Caribbean grandmother thinks she's better than black Americans. And Caribbeans who think I'm American treat me funny. But you're right. It has a cult mindset to a degree. I appreciate you, brother, and your interaction. It's interesting because that is the narrative, right? That they're better. Why are we better? But to the point, that's what was said. That's the energy that has been collectively and historically and tenuredly passed down. And it's not just from, again, the melanated people of the islands or the melanated people of the continents, but it's also, as the brother mentioned, with those who are immigrants. This mindset, and again, now first and foremost, this mindset has been propagated by media, and that's in the media in all forms and fashions, to continue to push this mindset of indifference and ostracization. And if you just your first time over here on brother Yashair's charcuterie, we chop up them words because what Webster got on us. So with that being said, ostracization and willingly doing it, even though your upbringings, even though your meager beginnings are very similar. The mindset and the haughtiness, and after a while, it just got accepted. And now we're in the time where these things are being accepted. So now that they're accepted, it's an issue, and I don't understand why it's an issue when everyone was always 10 toes down on, you are different with you. We're better than you because we know who we are. Knowing that this isn't because these folks just willingly forgot who they were, but that it was wrongfully taken from them. And done to such a level that there is plus million of people over here in these Americas that, as much as they would love, couldn't trace back past a certain point. And that's become a tongue-in-cheek point in a lot of these social spaces. Grandmothers. Because I know mines. That's what they say. And if you know that, and you know how that happened, why is that a point for you to stand on triumphantly? But that's what has happened. So then we fast forward to where we are now, and the topic and the discussion in which we're having. Where's the cult mindset come from? What are the cultish behaviors? If one is to, you can't even say Dr. Umar, because Dr. Umar is he all about melanated people all over everybody. What did he say? Black Queens forever. Nobody's never devil crazy. Yeah. But, right? So, where is the cultish aspect? That's the part that I'm just missing. Now, for those who don't self-identify, but they are FBA, they just don't use that phraseology. They too have said they see those who identify as FBA as some form of black hate, self-delusion, and again, an aid to white supremacy by self-indoctrinating themselves with anything outside of black, which will cause division amongst other blacks. But I don't recall the conversation being about wanting to divide more so than wanting to collectively have an identity that we can agree on. So, as now the topic has shifted, the atmosphere and the winds have shifted to this is a cult like Jim Jones, like everybody drinking the Kool-Aid, because unfortunately we're nowhere near the place where everybody thinks with the same monolithic mindset. We don't monotheistic mindset. We don't all have that. We're not a monolith of people, unfortunately. We should be, as it pertains to how we move with business, as it pertains to our image, publicly, collectively, individually. There are certain aspects of those points that I do believe we need to have the collective mindset. But as it pertains right now, with those who identify as FBA, it's not that way. So to identify them as a cult, I believe is a little bit forward. I appreciate you stopping by, Brother Unifier. It was great to I just wanted to stop by and have this conversation and start the conversation for some who may not have known that you are now looked at as a cult member. You are now looked at as a hater of black or melanated people because you want to identify as FBA in the eyes of some others. Brother Unifier says they had to deal with black Americans, and America would give money and their immigrants would give them culture. They were kings, and that place has been uprooted. Agreed. Please forgive me for my choppy reading, trying to catch it up off of there. That conversation, see, that segues into another aspect, because without the unification and the single mind focus of FBAs shifting their learned, propagandized, individual island mindsets. Everyone thinks they're an island when we are a collective, and shift that collective view to where is our coin? Because all other forms and variations of man who have had any so-called atrocity happen to them, collectively as they have gotten their coin. But because we're a group of individuals, our coin still sits out there. But the interest continues to grow. With that being said, the debt is due, and no one wants to see us collect that debt. As the Brother Unifier says, Black Americans are a threat because they are the riches of the diaspora. They're part of a powerful country, and so obviously they're a threat to the rest of the other blacks, which is so interesting because FBAs, like most melanated people, most have an energy of love. Though the media and though the interactions amongst each other in part don't highlight that, there are layers, as there are to most things in life, onto why that is. There is a major aspect where there is a choice, but these choices have been orchestrated painstakingly and tenuredly to come to this outcome, and that part can never be taken away. See, when you really understand that you are part of a people who have had to mitigate trauma upon trauma upon trauma upon trauma upon trauma upon trauma while surviving, while everyone else is spoken of their traumas and been given a tissue on the platform of the world, it does something to you, collectively and individually, whether you identify it or not. And that part is never really spoken of, that there is a group of people who have had to compact traumas with no restoration or no healing. It's become tongue-in-cheek, but I digress. Where we at with the Brother Unify? He killing us with the awesomeness today. I love it. The brother said, and they sure as heck don't get that, brother. Make sure I hold that. Yeah, get that coin. Nah, they don't. The Dave Chappelle skit. Remember FBA is getting their money. It was tongue in cheek, right? Because they showed them getting the Newports and everybody getting the this, that, and the third. But with that being said, whatever they wanted to get, they can get, because it was theirs to do with. If they chose to give right back, you know how some people say, oh, well, they'll just give right back. It's theirs to do that. At least they have it to do with, and when it's gone, it's gone. The fact of the matter is, it is old and has been old. Unfortunately, the tenured propaganda has caused so many individuals to pop up, and individuals are only worried about their own individual thing. Hence, they can't individually do anything, but collectively, the collective will have something to pass down to their children instead of trying to struggle. But we're a little bit further in the mess, and it's a lot more higher power on that's orchestrating some things to move in a certain way. But this conversation still nonetheless is interesting. All of a sudden, after all of the years of hate, after all the years of looking down upon, as the brother mentioned, those who see him, and he is mixed Caribbean and FBA, they think he FBA, so they treat him funny. Why is that? And you know his family. But why? What happened to the willing and cultural exchange? Like, as I was saying earlier, I got away from it because the brother had stepped in the room. My own personal experiences. When I first came across some brothers and sisters from the continent, I was like, wow, you're from the continent. Like, what is it like? Like, oh my gosh. Because over here, they treat us like crap, but you're like from the motherland. And they're like, it's not your motherland. And their energy really wasn't amicable. I learned that very, very quickly, unfortunately. And I tried it out in a couple different arenas, a couple different atmospheres. And the result was always the same. It wasn't until I had came across a blessed sister from the islands of Jamaica, from the grill, bless her heart, who changed my whole outlook on brothers and sisters from the continent and from Africa, with her energy, with her humanity, with her love, with her culture. And the exchange was amazing. And it was one of the blessed experiences that I keep and have kept with me throughout my adult tenure in my life. And it should be as such. It's not that myself, and I am now speaking forwardly, and I don't mean to, but humbly speaking, prior to the season of life in which we are in now, a good majority of FBAs always tried to foster an open line of communication with brothers and sisters from the continent or from the Caribbean islands. The energy just wasn't mutual, and it was taught, as it is now known from, again, brothers and sisters from the continent. You are taught to stay away from brothers and sisters over here. So when they showed it in the Black Panther movie, the original one, when the brother was still alive, when Chad, I will not destroy that man's name on the Sabbath, was still alive, and Killmonger and him was going after it. They have the brother from over here and the brother from over in the continent beefing, and that thing, and how they had the government come in. The ladies in Wakanda got down with the government, but they didn't want to get down with the brother. Dude, we all know the playbook because we can quote it. Over here we were taught this, over there we were taught that. That part is known. But the energy hasn't changed. And that's the problem. Let's get to these notes. What'd you say, brother? And don't get sidetracked, these brothers. Just read these when adding to the convo. Blessed. Oh, I appreciate you, brother. What do you think about the split in the Israelite community? Some are saying that only FBAs are Israelites because the others don't fit the description. I don't have a horse in the race, so. Unfortunately, brother, a lot of brothers and sisters in the Hebrew Israelite community have a lot more studying to do on the ideology and where that comes from. I still consider myself a Hebrew, but that is by choice. After doing the research, when you go and go see who were the founding fathers of the mindset, who say they first got it, and what were their origins, how that segued and started Rastafarianism and started other movements. Those who say that only FBAs are in the same group that say that those from the 12 tribes chart, you're just making conjecture at this point, unfortunately. What I have learned since you asked me, and what I have studied, and the Father has shown me, all praises. The way is the way. And when you know the way, you live the way. You see the way, you speak the way. Though you may fall, you stay on the road, and your fruit will show that evidence. Now, that also segues into one of the interesting scriptures, as you asked, where it goes, it said, paraphrasing here, my brother, there are other sheep that you know not. Those sheep, how would you identify them? You will know them by their fruit. So, for those brothers and sisters that fight that good fight of who is an FBA, who is an Israelite, you got to be able to stand 10 toes down on speaking comfortably about how that began. And if you can do that and you still have the energy to point fingers, your mind ain't on the right prize. I hope that I was able to answer that question. It was spoken in parable in part because I know you understand, but it was also spoken directly, brother. I wish the narrative of what has been happening hasn't gotten to the point where folks who can consider and call and now self-identify themselves as FBA have had to identify themselves as FBA and instead of as black people. But let's be honest, they've never really been black, brown, swarthy, olive. Never black. There's always been a separation between the energy of brothers and sisters from the continent and brothers and sisters from the Caribbean islands. And it's not predicated on just the American energy, because that is also a big aspect. FBAs are most definitely Americans. They have all the American mindsets and pollutions. So that part can't be taken away either. But then there's the other aspect. What culture what culture do you have? What impact do you have? What is your contribution? These are the conversations that a lot of brothers and sisters from the continent have been throwing out there. The essence of the FBA is that undying essence that has changed the landscape of the earth, considering that they are at the lowest, but they make an imprint and are used as the most influential and are used as the most relied upon resource. So outside of the resources that they always house and steal from out of the content, there are people who have been their perpetual resource for all their endeavors, whether it be their scientific bullcrap and their what do you call that TV show? American Horror Story. Whether it be their capital and the slave trade, whether it be their workforce and their labor, whether it be their sex toys, whether it be their food source. FBA's been there, man. And that's not to say that other nations haven't had horrible atrocities, but we just talking about the impact, because the question is always, what is your impact? What is your contribution? Well, those people that come from that stock have created the most inventions. Those people who have come from that stock have generated the most melanated millionaires, thousandaires, hundredaires, billionaires. We're not talking about old money, because we know that that doesn't count, because that has been stolen from us. So old families, old nations, like those who are in the Near East, they got old money, billion money. We're not talking about that. That's a different conversation. What we got up there, brother? He says, it shows that the entire doctrine was based on conjecture. And it's so easy to move people in and that out of that group. What was that truly based on? So this is an interesting thing about that, brother. And because I know you learn. See, these conversations, it's different conversations, you know what I mean? But for the topic, that text, brother, was created in fallacy. However, it ended up being true, like the never-ending story. What's that part? That's the part that's messing with my mind. It was created knowing it was a lie by liars. But then the lies started happening. And it started playing out. So I mean, like that part right there is like I understand some things are being orchestrated, but that part has me scratching the head. Shalom, our conversation. We were talking about when did the FBA or those who self-identify as FBA start to be as a cult. I had to ask for a couple of examples. The one major example that was submitted by the brother who brought this thought process in, as I said, I was going to use it, was that it is a byproduct of white supremacy. And those who subscribe to the FBA mindset are micro white supremacists who are aiding in dividing melanated peoples from uniting against non-melanated people in his mindset, which he wants no part of. He believes his statements are truthful in that, and his backing is that individuals from self-identifying groups all befriend him on social media and try to engage with him because of his stance. Shalom, brother. I've been out here in the wilderness like a lot of us. You know what I'm saying? And when you be out there, either you gonna learn or you gonna perish. I prefer to try to learn, though I fall, because I'm but a man. You know what I'm saying? But with it, I've gained some insight. So, I appreciate that, brother. I wish it was different, but I don't see that changing. And so, I saw another brother say, it is very interesting that this micro division, in his words, is starting to form at a time when Africa is now starting to seemingly look like it's in a position to start to rise. With the things that have happened with Burkina Faso and some of the other nations looking to implement similar tactics and regimes, why would those who are identifying as FBA choose to separate and delineate from the continent? And again, he believes that that is a byproduct of some orchestration. I can understand that thought process, and I can definitely see where that is also definitely being assisted in. Make no mistakes. So I will say that. Make no mistakes. Governmental systems are aiding and making sure this propaganda gets brought into your algorithm to foster these mindsets. That part is also happening. It is just it's not being heavily pushed from that side. They doing their part, but at this stage in the game, they on like super duper light maintenance, super duper light tweaking. Let me steer you over here real quick. Whoop-de-whoop. They ain't really, because the work is already done, and unfortunately it's producing fruit of itself, and that's what the problem is. You can't go to Jamaica and tell them England should not give them reparations for slavery. Where respect is shown, that's when we can come together. Agree. How would they feel if you tried to pop off that? They'd be like, Nah, I got it wrong. Yeah. Me bumba clock. It would never. And rightfully so. I mean, but, well, see, it's layers to this thing, bro. It's layers to this thing, bro. Because you know what just came to my mind? Shalom, appreciate those who just stopped by. Chris Eubank. Anybody familiar with Chris Eubank Sr., the boxer? Is anybody familiar with Chris Eubank Sr., the boxer? Please tell me you know who that man is. If you don't, check him out, please. Check him out, please. Check him out, please, with my Umar voice. Everybody got their moments where they go through some stuff, but I appreciate when you be on point with the things you be on. But with that being said, Chris Eubank, Jamaican, England, boxer. So, he's an English boxer, but his origins are Jamaican. And he very much so puts a lot of respect and a lot of stock on England, or Britain. And I'm not here to sully his convictions on the soil in which he gives his respect to, because I respect Mr. Eubanks very greatly. He's an outstanding gentleman and well-spoken brother. But to the point, his respect on what he felt as though was gained in the colonization of Jamaica by Britain or England. So it's interesting about how you had threw that up there. You can't go over there and say, oh, I don't think y'all should get reparations, because again, there are those who think that we shouldn't, because what we gained was more than we had ever had. I'm not here, in my humble opinion, to even throw a dog in that fight. Our relations are built on respect. And this is a people's home with a long history, not a get-rich-quick scheme. People don't realize this. Agreed, unfortunately. But they do realize it because we're in the most transactional, environment. It is really, you know what? I take that back. The capitalistic system has always been transactional. It's quicker. When I look back in my mind to when I was a young man, and you go back to like the old 70s movies, the old 60s movies, the old 50s movies, they always had sections and locations where people were just blowing their money. Alcohol, drugs, and stuff like that. If they was affluent, they had the drugs. If they wasn't, they had the alcohol, the gambling. So there were always vices out there for people to get rid of their money and to get rich quick schemes and stuff like that. Like, when you have the Post come out about relationships, business relationships, where foremen are saying, I have had multiple incidents where those who consider themselves Black American, African American, because they don't say FBA when they be in the business sense talking, they be like, those who consider themselves African American, they don't come to tell on the immigrants or when they have issues unless they got real beef. But the immigrants always come and tell on the blacks. You shouldn't hire them. I got somebody to come work with me. Nobody like messing with nobody else's money. And unless you messing with me, I ain't really messing with you. But there has been a continued collective, or like they lazy over here. It's not that we lazy, we want to be paid properly for the work that we do like everybody else. The joint over there is that they've been paying y'all crap over in your land. So over here you think that what we turning our nose up is like, oh, that's amazing. Like, nah, that's amazing to you because of where you coming from. Over here, they owe you more actually for what you doing. They cheapest stuffing burgers. And because they cheapest stuffing burgers, that's why they asked you to come over here. But then they get flippity and be like, oh yeah, get the dogs and get them back over the fence. I don't hear me though. That being said, the FBAs don't hold themselves accountable for that sake of a solidarity. It's wrong when the immigrants do it. It's disappointing that they're lowering their morality to spite, to spite people. Brother Unifier, that part right there. Accountability is kryptonite to FBAs. It's super kryptonite to FBA women. Let me get my alcohol on that. Why is it kryptonite? It's kryptonite because due to the historical over critical and abusive correction, punishment, sabotage, critical eye, critique, anything that sounds remotely in that vein is automatically shut down from most of the collective ear of the FBAs because of that point, because they've been over criticized, they've been over punished, they've been over critiqued, they've been over held to the standard, and nothing has come being held to that standard. It hasn't produced the same results as it seemingly has been admitted that it would. And so now everyone's ear is closed to anything that look like accountability or correction, unfortunately. The only group within that aspect, in my humble opinion, that will receive or hear or can be held accountable are those who walk under a higher power. Because only those who submit themselves to a higher authority have learned to step outside of themselves and be able to see the bigger picture, in my humble opinion. The collective, for too long, they always got the short end of the stick. And at this point, a generation has raised a generation that has raised a generation that don't care nothing about what you say and don't care nothing about what you talk about. And that right there, the Mexicans do call their own out when they cheat or criticize Terrence Crawford for cheating without tested dirty, right? That's true. Well, so here's the thing about that, right? Dumb brothers that are militant and run the country in Mexico called the cartel, everybody know to respect them brothers. And they handle their stuff savagely, brother. Them brothers is no joke. And them people down there, they like folks up here. You got those who are willing to give the sacrifice to speak the truth, but the majority stay in their lane because they rather stay alive. It's like that in all groups. All groups got their little faction and group that do some little nefarious work. It's just that they don't get the global spotlight that FBAs have been given. Historically, whether it be through film, whether it be through music, whether it be through literature. Garcia, they just be doing their puppet game. Like, I don't know what's going on with that boy. That child, like, he got out there in Babylon and realized that it's he realized the cost is a heavy cost, and it ain't no coming back once you sign the letter. So he tweaking. No FBAs can do wrong, and that's wrong, man. The behavior wasn't correct in the first place. The behavior is horrible, and this is how segueing again into what I'll be doing that upcoming video on. Would you say that you are of a boule mindset because you want to separate from the lawless conversation that has become commonplace within the FBA community? Because this is a point, and rightfully so, that other melanated companies, though they have their issues, the issues of no accountability amongst each other collectively has been detrimental for the last 70 years. And if it isn't corrected right now, in my humble opinion, the extinction of a group of people is at the verge. But brother, I say that American blacks always call their own out. Now, with the FBA movement, no American blacks can do it wrong. It's a bit disappointing, but I get it. Okay. So I was a bit forward in my statement, because when I was using FBA, I was accounting those who didn't consider themselves FBA as well as those who identify as FBA. Those who identify as FBA, unfortunately, in my humble opinion, not all, but a good majority, are of the recent I'm smiling and pausing like this because I don't want to say it, but it's no other way to get around it. Woke. I'll say open mindsets. And so, with that, not being able to hold one accountable, that practice is a practice that's carried over from out of the collective with the no snitching rule. And again, that can't be something that can take any precedent if anything is going to be built from a foundational level of unity. But again, that's, look, I love this desire to begin to cultivate in this time, because there have always been movements. Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. We shall overcome. There have always been movements and groups. But in this time, the misfit children of the world, the most hated of the world, in their endeavors to unify and self-identify with something outside of a color that obviously does not represent the hue of their skin. For them not to call each other out and not be held accountable in this inception will be a disservice that I don't believe would be something that will go forward as this movement continues to shape into what it's going to be. Simply because two can't walk together unless they agree. And now that folks are, again, as I mentioned before, mentioned in the stream, in a place and time where the articulation, in a place and time where the thought processes are more commonly open because information is running to and from with the medias and on the tongues. These are the conversations that we are having now, in my doctoral memoir, because we're having it in real time, that our parents didn't have. Because though some of them may have known some of the words, the collective did not, the way that you can get it now with social media and learn it. And like, oh yeah, I do have that. Oh yeah, I was raised like that. Oh yeah, I do feel that way sometimes. The way we have come to this point. So, with that, I do believe that the holding of accountability with the collective has and will be something that is a focal point, because again, I ain't even gonna say that part. It's just a known that that's important enough and to be rectified, because you can't build nothing together again if you can't be on the same accord. Well, I take that. Oh man, I appreciate that, brother, man. I'm trying. I ain't nothing but a chicken sandwich. I'm trying to get it together. All praises to the Most High. You know what I'm saying? I ain't making no noise. I appreciate you, brother, and I appreciate the engagement. There was some conversations that I wanted to have today. You definitely blessed me on this Sabbath, so I appreciate you, sir. I think I'm about to get up out of here, folks. Unless anyone else has anything to add to the conversation about the FBA cult mindset. Is it a mindset of a cult to you, or do you see it as a survival tactic for a group of people who have been marginalized and ostracized by even others that share the predominantly melanated pigmented hue? So it's that part, right? Be on the lookout for the video that's coming up, because this conversation has stemmed from one of the aspects. Again, as I said, the brother was very aggressive in his stance on how he saw those who identify as FBA as a form of white supremacy and a tool and ideology that they have picked up due to being underneath of a system of oppression that he wants no parts of, and believes that the spaces in which they operated and shut down with such vicious vigor, so that the head of this micro white supremacist ideology of the vision will never rise itself up again within a melanated space amongst melanated people towards melanated people. But again, I ask that question. If you care about the simplicities, you ain't out here to hurt nobody. You take your behind to whatever business endeavor that you earn your revenue stream. It's an earnest, honest living. You don't look to hurt nobody, don't look to get over on nobody. Is it wrong for you, if you happen to be melanated, to want to separate from folks who are robbing, stealing, killing, but they look like you, but don't got no energy for nobody else? Would you say you're a boule person? Is that boule? I don't see how solidarity is white supremacy. I don't see how solidarity is white supremacy. And I don't think he was saying that. He was saying that a form of separation from those who call themselves FBA, from those of the continent and of their lands within the continent, and those of the Caribbean islands, and separating from them by saying they're FBA. He doesn't agree with that ideology. He believes that's a form of white supremacy, even though those brothers and sisters can probably say, I'm from St. Lucia, I'm from the Sudan, I am from Kenya, I am from the grill. So when the tribes in Africa delineate from each other, how is that not white supremacy then? The Nigerians do not claim to be the same as South Africans. Yeah. Side note, it's been a lot of conversation about Nigerians the last 2 years. Why is that? They've been pushing they've been pushing the real husky narrative against Nigerians. Real husky. Real husky. As I think about it. And how was white supremacy with random blacks treat? Let me see. How is it white supremacy when random blacks treat you worse than white Americans who've been here? How is it white supremacy when random blacks treat you worse than white Americans who've been here? It's just culture and experience. Southern people can literally say whites have treated them well. That is one of the microcosms of accountability that has escaped the collective, whether they identify as FBA or where they don't identify as FBA. That part right there where it's like, how is it that those who have promoted death and destruction don't get looked at as sellouts? How is it that those who rob and those who destroy, again, I brought this up earlier when I talked about those who you have learned and seen in your life's journey, who have always been rebels, destroyers, fighters, truce breakers, cussers, crash outs. They've always been like that. Their family has been like that. So with that being said, why haven't they been given the moniker of the destructive pieces of garbage that they have been? Because that's who they've been. That's who they are. That's what they do. And there are instances where, unfortunately, historically, multiple instances where a brother or a sister will treat you with a lot more disdain and aggression than one of the non-melanated counterparts. But it's so subjective because, again, there's so many layers into that. There has been aided seeds to that mentality and to that microaggression, that, and then it comes from a higher source. It comes from a higher source, in my humble opinion, because I've seen it contextually, scriptorially, historically. And the only other thing outside of the seeds that I know have been planted to cause division is that it's innate. And that is a problem. But that has always been a problem. So when I understood that it's innate, I understood it came from a higher source. The truth is, black unity without morality benefits robbers, not good people. Absolutely. I can't get down with Pan Africanism simply because I don't agree with all of the thought processes that go along with how some of them brothers and sisters will live their life. And I don't mean that to be forward or judgmental. I mean it to be in a place of, I find it to be spiritually harmful and physically harmful. And in that regard, if it's not good for me, it's not good for my children. If it's not good for my children, what are we doing there? It's that issue that we have. However, that's a small side page when it comes to the bigger page of unity on the unified front abroad. Because in that regard, teamwork make the dream work. I just can't, you know what I'm saying, subscribe to. It's a lot that I can't subscribe to, unfortunately. All praises to the Most High. That's why the Father's made us the way that He has made us, to be watchmen and to be lights. Yeah. Brother. Yeah. That's a good question. That's a good question. Well, look, you blessed me greatly. I appreciate you stopping by. I pray that the conversation was able to answer some questions as it pertains to the topic. I wasn't able to give you a definitive answer because it wasn't my statement. I was simply asking the question of those who were willing to stop by and share their perspective while we were chopping it up. I appreciate the brother Yeshua the Unifier for stopping by and your interaction. I appreciate the other viewers for stopping by, for the seconds and the minutes that you stopped by. Be on the lookout for the next upcoming submission, because the topics that we're going to cover, or that I'm going to cover in that, we'll cover not only this, but is separation needed? We're going to go over some of the topics that Brother Humble dropped off as it pertains to the Black Panther Party, the receiving of the Black Panther Party in the time period that it was originated, the ultimate end and destruction from within and without of the Black Panther Party, as shared from the Brother Humble, and with some of the breakdown, and then we'll connect that with some other videos that we have that will hopefully paint the picture. This has been a blessing. I pray that you have a wonderful night. Blessings and peace be unto you. Shalom.